What if the person you loved most started slipping away, not just from memory, but into something darker, something unspeakable? Welcome to Movie Reviews YT, where we explore the twisted, the terrifying, and the unforgettable. Today, we're diving into the eerie found footage descent that is The Taking of Deborah Logan, a film that blends mental illness, supernatural horror, and documentary realism into one of the most chilling experiences in modern horror. It all begins with a student film crew documenting the effects of Alzheimer's on an elderly woman named Deborah Logan. Set in a quiet, rural home nestled deep in Virginia, things start off almost clinical. Deborah is forgetful, confused, sometimes aggressive. Her daughter Sarah tries her best to hold everything together, fighting frustration, sadness, and fear. But something doesn't add up. The behavior isn't just erratic, it's impossible. Objects move on their own, voices echo in recordings that no one heard aloud, and Deborah begins doing things that defy explanation. Is it the disease, or is something else taking over? As the days go by, the house seems to pulse with dread. Deborah's condition worsens. She speaks in strange tongues, disappears for hours, and digs furiously at the earth in the backyard, searching for something. The documentary crew, initially skeptical, starts to witness unexplainable events that force them to reconsider what they're actually filming. Their clinical lens becomes personal, haunted. They're no longer documenting, they're surviving. Cameras that once served to capture truth now become a window into madness. Every flicker, every static glitch, every sudden cut in the footage feels like a scream from the other side. Then comes the shift. What looked like a medical case turns into a spiritual one. Clues point to a sinister local legend, and the past Deborah tried to bury starts clawing its way to the surface. A missing child, a ritual, a man who vanished but left behind an echo in Deborah's fractured mind. Is she reliving trauma or being used by something ancient and malevolent? The tension spirals. The footage grows grainier. Lights flicker. The line between documentary and nightmare collapses. We begin to question not just Deborah's sanity, but our own understanding of what's real. The brilliance of this film lies in how it treats horror not with jump scares, but with slow, creeping dread. It mirrors the helplessness of watching someone disappear inside themselves. Except here, the entity inside wants out. It's a metaphor for disease, but also for something darker. Something we can't medicate, can't explain. Found footage films often follow a pattern, but The Taking of Deborah Logan breaks it. It builds real emotion before fear. It earns your investment, and when it turns the screws, you're already trapped. As the rituals of hospital and possession grow more visible, the boundaries between Deborah and something ancient blur. Her strength is inhuman, her gaze dead and alert at the same time. The crew becomes entangled in something far beyond filmmaking, each member facing not only fear, but their own vulnerability. Cameras become confessionals. Lights become lifelines. The home transforms into a maze of corridors that no longer lead to safety, but to revelation. The town's forgotten past resurfaces through medical records, old photographs, newspaper clippings, a pattern of disappearances. The name Henri Desjardins, a former doctor turned cultist, keeps coming up. The belief that a body could be used as a vessel to transcend mortality. The horror of Deborah's transformation lies in its plausibility. An old woman, battling dementia, slowly consumed not only by illness, but by an evil that exploits her fragility. The film draws power from its realism. The performances are raw, the camera work intentionally imperfect. It feels real because it's messy, chaotic, like memory itself. It doesn't need elaborate effects. The horror lives in the expressions, in the quiet, in the things you think you see in the background. The static becomes part of the story. Shadows that shift, breathing that doesn't match the number of people in the room, hallucinations that feel more like revelations. Deborah is terrifying not because she's monstrous, but because she was once like anyone's grandmother. Gentle, loving, confused. And now she's something else. She screams in voices not her own. Her body contorts in unnatural ways. But worse are the silences, the moments where she stares, eyes locked on something no one else can see. It's in those moments the film's horror truly comes alive, not in action, but in anticipation. There's a scene, no spoilers, where the camera catches something in a hospital corridor. It's brief, almost dismissible, but if you pause, if you look, it chills you deeper than any loud scare could. That's what makes this film brilliant. It trusts the audience. It trusts you to piece together the dread, to feel the weight of the unknown pressing in. Every frame feels like it could hold a secret. By the time we reach the final act, all pretenses of sanity are gone. What began as a documentary is now a desperate record of survival. The characters are no longer filmmakers. They're witnesses, or maybe participants. The tunnel scene becomes iconic, not just for what it shows, but for what it suggests. The camera struggles to keep up. Night vision reveals things the eye should never see. Deborah becomes something unrecognizable, an avatar of ancient fear. And the child, the one she's drawn to. We realize what the connection means far too late. But the Taking of Deborah Logan doesn't stop at horror. It lingers on grief, on guilt, on the burden of caregiving. Sarah's journey as Deborah's daughter is devastating. Her loyalty turning into terror, her sadness into desperation. She wants to save her mother, but save her from what? From Alzheimer's? From possession? From herself? The line blurs, and in that blur, the audience is left trembling. Some films haunt you with ghosts. This one haunts you with questions. Can trauma awaken evil? Can grief open doors best left closed? And most chilling, how do we know the line between mental illness and supernatural interference? Maybe some doors should stay shut. Maybe some minds are better left unexplored. The final moments hit hard, not because of gore or spectacle, but because of silence. The camera lingers, the screen flickers, and the story doesn't end. It just stops. But you're left carrying it, thinking about it, wondering. Deborah's story isn't just horror, it's tragedy, it's folklore, it's a warning. It's also a story about legacy, about what we leave behind, memories, trauma, secrets. The footage captured isn't just data, it's evidence, testimony, a record of a descent into darkness that no one will fully understand. The cameras kept rolling even when they shouldn't. Maybe because someone, something, wanted this story told. And what about the crew? Each of them walked in as observer, but the deeper they went, the more they became entangled. Their fear is personal. Their shock is real. The found footage format works here because it blurs the line between fiction and reality. And once that line is blurred, you start to feel like you're part of the story too. You start to ask, what would I do if I were there? Would I keep filming? Would I run? Would I try to help? Or would I fall into the same trap, believing I could stay objective while the darkness crept in? But even after the screen goes black, the questions stay with you. Why Deborah? Why now? What opened the door? And can it happen again? Horror like this doesn't end with the credits. It lingers, it waits, and it whispers. The more you think about the film, the more layers emerge. The nature of possession, literal and metaphorical, the haunting presence of the past. The idea is that pain leaves a residue, and if you don't face it, it grows roots. The tunnel is more than a location. It's a metaphor, a descent into the darkest parts of the human psyche, into what we bury, what we forget, what we fear to confront. And Deborah, she becomes both a victim and a conduit, a woman whose life was already fading, being overtaken by something with no life at all. It's not just about ghosts, it's about history, memory, loss, and the terrifying idea that the mind can become a battlefield between who we were and what we could become. If this journey into a daylight nightmare hit you hard, drop a like if you love films that challenge you, unsettle you, and stick with you long after the credits roll. Let us know in the comments, was Deborah a victim of the supernatural or of a system that forgot her long before the cameras started rolling? If you liked this video, Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you won't miss our next recaps. And just when you think the story's over, look again. Listen. The tape never stopped. Some footage never got reviewed. Some voices are still on the line. Because once you open a door like this, it never really closes.